In Minecraft's early development, many features would be experimented with and either remain in the game and evolve with time or be removed. Examining a few of these lost additions can give a look into how differently Minecraft could have turned out. In this video, we will explore 10 more interesting early Minecraft features that were taken out. If you have not seen my first video, I would highly recommend you do so. Feel free to do so before or after the end of the video. Just like in the previous video, we are going to go chronologically in order of when these were placed in the game by Notch and Mojang. With that said, let's start off with a feature from Classic. From May to November 2009, Minecraft would be in its second phase of development, but be in the first phase to release a few versions for the public to play. During this time, the first ever armor type would be added. This would be called plate armor. This looks pretty similar to iron armor, but the chest plate is shorter than iron and there is only two pieces of the set: the chest plate and the helmet. When wearing the armor, it won't give its user any protection and was used to test the armor system that was being developed. This is only one of two sets of armor that was ever removed from the game in Minecraft's history. The other one is found in InDev would overtake Classic as Minecraft's latest version on December 23rd. The other set is named Studded Armor, but it is also named Leather Chain Armor because it's a unique combination of those armor types. It was used in InDev 0.31 and might have also given no armor protection from anything. There were 4 pieces of armor that needed a mix of iron ingots and leather to craft it. It likely had the same testing purpose as plate armor, but besides that, there isn't any more information that I could find about these sets. Upon going into the player menu, under player name, you can see 3 different statistics. Each one of them was set to 100. These likely stood for attack, defense, and speed. Besides screenshots, the only information we can get on the early game stats was a Reddit user posting about this mysterious feature, then proceeding to comment below asking Notch directly what plans he had regarding this. Sadly, he didn't respond. But then... the creator himself is summoned out of thin air, replying that he didn't remember putting them in the game and assumed it was added as a placeholder for vague plans. As if that wasn't impressive enough, this guy called Notch base before most of us even knew what that meant a whole 5 years ago. If I had to guess, I think that the stat placeholders were meant to function as a more complex form of how armor, weapon, and tool ratings are today. What are your thoughts? Not too long after stats were first introduced, gears were implemented. It functioned as a block that could be placed on walls in the ground but had no clear reason for what it would do. That doesn't stop the theories on its function though. The most widely believed purpose is that it was going to be used for many mechanisms, very similar to redstone. If the gear block was placed, it would not be visible unless there was another block next to it on the same Y level. It was also impossible to break and had to be removed by letting water flow through them, or by an explosion. The gear would be very buggy in its short lifespan and end up being replaced in early alpha with redstone. Before we continue into alpha, I would just like to say that if you are enjoying the video, I would appreciate you subscribing and or liking the video if you enjoyed it. Now back to the video. In early alpha, Notch would accidentally put in a music piece that he created for testing purposes before being taken out only 10 days later. What you are hearing now is called Calm 4, the only music track that Notch created for the game. I don't know if I would consider this music to be calming, but for a song that was only supposed to be used for testing, it's such a great catchy piece to listen to. In the middle of the song, the listener will hear This is said by Notch and is played slowed down. Interestingly, Mojang Specifications was actually the company's name at the time before later rebranding as Mojang Studios. I don't know about you, but I think it would be cool to have this music brought into the game as a music disc. Maybe it could be an extremely rare drop and would make a great Easter egg. Before the adventure update added jungles into the game, we had the lush rainforests. These biomes came with Alpha 1.2, featuring much denser vegetation like trees and plants than the average biome. The usual terrain is flat plains but can become very hilly and mountainous on occasion. These trees in this biome had a 33% chance of being a large variant, while in the every other biome, those odds were only 10%. In the pre-release of Beta 1.8, they would end up being removed. This was not the only biome added in Alpha 1.2 and removed in Beta 1.8. There were also 5 other biomes that were taken out. The Savanna biome and the shrublands look identical but have different values to each other. I couldn't find any pictures or footage of what looked like a shrubland, so instead, I'm gonna show you a picture of this polar bear wearing this top hat. The seasonal forest is just a lower density version of this normal forest biome. And then there is the ice desert, which looked a lot like the tundras, which were removed but added back into the game under the name of snowy plains. However, instead of the surface being dirt, it was made of sand. This was a mostly barren landscape because no trees, flowers, or passive animals would spawn, and would have been the coldest of the biomes had it been fully placed in the game. Before being removed, this landscape was left in the game code and could never be used without the use of mods. When very late 2010 arrived, Minecraft moved on to beta. Just shortly before this, Jeb joined the team as a developer. One of his first projects was the creation of an aquatic mob. This mob would soon be labeled as the squid and be added in beta 1.2. Something was off about it though. Players discovered that right-clicking on the squid with a bucket in their hand caused the bucket to instantly fill up with milk. This was actually a mistake left in the game by Jeb. This is because squids were created from the model of a cow. This included the same pathfinding AI and milking mechanics as the animal. It would end up being patched in 1.3 a month later. Before being re-implemented in the Nether update, Crying Obsidian was a block that had its texture introduced in Beta 1.3 and Pocket Edition Alpha 0.1 for a short while. Instead of the purposes it had today, it at first acted as a way to reset the player's spawn point in the overworld and would be crafted using lapis lazuli. But then beds were introduced, replacing Crying Obsidian's purpose. It would be removed from the game in Beta 1.5 and be placed back into the game almost 9 years later. The Minecraft community had heavily requested that Crying Obsidian return in 1.16 in a similar way to its initial purpose all the way back. This influenced the creation of the respawn anchor that can be crafted using 6 Crying Obsidian and 3 glowstone with the purpose of respawning in the Nether. In the same update that Crying Obsidian was added to Pocket Edition, the textures and models of the camera were also added to make its first appearance. In 0.2, the item and tripod textures of the camera will be changed to music discs, and could now be used. Once the player has the camera in their hand, they could look at the direction they want the picture taken and touch and hold the screen for a few seconds. This will cause the camera to drop wherever the player was standing at that moment. This would position the camera for a photo shoot. Tapping on the camera until smoke particles come out means that the picture was taken, then the camera would disappear afterward. In 0.5, the camera would be invisible and when tapping on it, would play the hurt sound. A few updates later, the texture would go through an identity crisis and turn into an egg for a brief time before being removed entirely. The camera would be placed back in Pocket Edition in 2016 for a while before being removed again. During the same year, it would be put into the new Minecraft Education Edition where it remains today. In 2018, Bedrock would also include the camera, however would be unobtainable for most of its lifespan but still remain in the game files. In pre-release 3 of Beta 1.9, glass pillars could be found around the world that would shoot into the sky to the world height limit. They would mark the location of strongholds underneath at the time an Eye of Ender had not been programmed to lead to strongholds. These pillars were not meant to appear in this version and were left in accidentally by Jeb before its public release. These pillars would be removed in the very next pre-release when the Eyes of Ender were now able to lead the player to strongholds. That was all 10 features, but there are still some others that I want to mention as a little bonus. In the indev files, there were 2 mysterious textures that might have resembled a chair or a table, and around the time, Notch had mentioned chairs in a few instances. Strange human entities can be found in the classic and indev phases. They had no animation and were used for testing purposes and could drop a variety of items upon their death, including but not limited to string, feathers, and sulfur. Cyan flowers could only be obtained in early Pocket Editions around its world. They had a texture similar to roses and were replaced in 0.9 by poppies, however can still be found in Minecraft Pi Edition. There was an infinite lava source block that was added in January 2010 and removed 5 months later. For a very brief time in Alpha 1.2, you had the ability to spawn nether portals by simply pressing F4. With that last feature, we'll conclude the video. With the amount that I have mentioned within this and my other video, I definitely did not get all of them. There are still some bits and pieces of interesting removed features that I could have mentioned and I might consider revisiting them in the future. I would love to hear your thoughts on these features. Which one interested you the most, and what other ones interest you that I have not covered yet? Hope you enjoyed the video. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed, and have a good one.